Hey everyone, welcome to the Divorce Dispatcher, where we dive into the wildest, most unbelievable stories of divorce, breakups, and family drama. Stories that'll leave you speechless. Today we have the story of Natalie.
Natalie, 29W, 32H. It all started with cake. I didn't want to be at that birthday party. It was crowded, loud, and filled with people I didn't know. I lingered near the dessert table, pretending to scroll through my phone just to look busy. That's when Marcus appeared, tall, confident, and grinning like he already knew all my secrets. "You've been staring at that cake for 15 minutes?" he teased, handing me a plate. "Go on, it's not going to eat itself." I blushed, laughing nervously. I guess I'm not much of a party person. "Neither am I," he said, leaning in like he was telling me something important. "We'll stick together tonight. I'm Marcus, by the way." I smiled. I felt chosen, special. He was charming, magnetic, and I let him sweep me into his orbit without a second thought. Looking back now, that moment feels like a metaphor for our entire relationship. Marcus always took control, and I let him. I thought his confidence was romantic. I thought being low maintenance would make me someone he'd never want to leave. Dating Marcus was a whirlwind. He'd pick me up at random times unannounced because that's when he was free. I never asked him to plan ahead or make time for me. I didn't want to seem demanding. When he didn't text for hours, I told myself it was normal. He was busy. When he ignored my tags on social media or refused to post pictures of us, I laughed it off. "It's not like we need to broadcast our relationship," he'd say when I brought it up. "People don't need to know our business." But his business was all over his profile. Pictures of nights out with his friends, bikini-clad influencers he followed, heart emojis he dropped under other women's posts. I'd scroll through, trying not to let it sting. "Why do you follow all these women?" I asked him once. "It makes me feel invisible." "Jesus, Nat, it's just Instagram. Stop being so insecure." So I dropped it. I told myself I was overreacting, and I shoved those feelings down. Every time Marcus made me feel small, I told myself it was my fault for being too needy, too clingy, too much. 3 years later, he proposed. It was nothing like I'd dreamed. No candlelit dinner or heartfelt speech. He simply handed me a ring one night when we were watching TV. "Well," he said, smiling, "do you want to marry me or not?" It wasn't the romantic moment I'd imagined, but I said yes. I convinced myself it didn't matter. Love wasn't about grand gestures, right? Besides, I'd spent so much time trying to be good enough for Marcus that his proposal felt like proof I'd succeeded. I posted the engagement online immediately. Photos of the ring, excited captions, a flurry of congratulations from friends and family. Marcus posted one blurry picture with the caption, "She said yes." No tags, no story, no follow-up. It stung, but I didn't say anything. I was just grateful he wanted to marry me. At first, being Marcus's wife felt like a badge of honor. We bought a modest home, and I decorated it to make it cozy and warm. I thought we were happy, or at least I told myself we were. Then came the excuses. Marcus always had to work late. If I asked him to join me for dinner, he'd shrug me off. "Not tonight, Nat. I'm exhausted." I started spending nights alone on the couch, scrolling through my own phone, watching his social media fill up with photos of friends and parties I wasn't invited to. "Who's this girl you keep liking posts from?" I asked him one night when I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Seriously, Natalie? You're still on about that? I follow people. It doesn't mean anything." "It means something to me," I said softly. "Well, it shouldn't." That was Marcus. Always dismissing me, always making me feel like I was asking for too much. I stopped bringing it up. I stopped asking for anything at all. When I found out I was pregnant, I was overjoyed. For the first time in a long time, Marcus seemed happy too. "We're going to be parents," he said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm proud of you." I clung to that moment. I wanted it to mean that everything was going to be okay. But then came the sickness. I developed hyperemesis gravidarum, a condition that left me bedridden with constant vomiting, dehydration, and weakness. I couldn't keep anything down. I dropped weight. My doctor warned me that my heart was struggling to keep up. Marcus started to pull away. He hated seeing me like that. Fragile, needy, dependent. "This is hard for me too, Nat," he said when I asked for help one night. I'd been vomiting for hours, and I begged him to hold my hand. "You act like I don't care. I'm just overwhelmed." By the time I reached the second trimester, I could barely function. My doctor sat me down, her face somber. "Natalie, your heart won't survive this. I recommend termination for your safety." Termination. I sat in that room shaking, tears streaming down my face. When I told Marcus what the doctor said, he didn't react the way I expected. "It's your body," he said flatly. "Do what you think is best." I thought he'd fight for me. I thought he'd say, "We'll figure this out together." Instead, he left me to carry the weight of that decision alone. I couldn't bring myself to do it. I wanted to fight for this baby, even if it meant risking everything. But my body gave up before I did. The miscarriage hit me like a storm. One night, the pain started, sharp and unrelenting. I curled up on the floor, sobbing. I called for Marcus, but he was in the guest room again, pretending not to hear. By the time I got to the hospital, it was too late. Questions for the divorce dispatcher. How do you forgive someone who abandons you in your darkest hour? How did I let it get this bad?
Divorce dispatcher is here. You rang? Natalie's situation reflects the harsh emotional abandonment that can occur during a crisis. While grief can manifest differently in partners, Marcus's detachment and avoidance are deeply damaging. If Natalie chooses to leave, she must document these events. Medical records, communication logs, and financial history can serve as powerful evidence during a divorce. For those struggling with similar experiences, therapy provides a safe space to process grief and rebuild emotional strength.
When I woke up in the hospital after the miscarriage, everything felt empty. My arms, my body, my heart. They were all hollow. I remember lying there, staring at the ceiling, feeling as though the world had spun on without me. Marcus arrived hours later, his face unreadable. He sat at the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone, his thumb lazily swiping the screen. He didn't say anything at first. I couldn't take it anymore. "Say something," I whispered, my throat raw from sobbing. "What do you want me to say, Nat?" he said, still not looking up. "This sucks. I'm sorry." I waited for him to come closer, to hug me, to hold my hand and tell me we'd get through this. He never did. Instead, Marcus stayed for less than half an hour before leaving to clear his head. Later that night, I checked his location on his phone. He was at a friend's house, drinking beers and watching a football game. My doctor wanted me to stay a few more days for observation, but Marcus didn't come back until I was discharged. He didn't even pick me up. I caught a taxi home, and the driver, an older man with kind eyes, noticed I was struggling to breathe when I got into the car. "You okay, miss?" he asked softly as I sat there, clutching my chest. I shook my head, tears welling up. I just lost my baby. The driver didn't say much after that. He simply handed me a box of tissues and quietly drove me home. When we pulled up to my house, I realized I didn't have the strength to make it to the front door. The driver parked, got out, and gently helped me up the steps. I'll never forget the way he looked at me, like he actually cared. "I'm sorry you're going through this," he said. His words stayed with me far longer than Marcus's ever did. The house was silent when I got inside. Marcus wasn't home. His car wasn't in the driveway. I sat on the couch for hours, still in my hospital gown, not sure what to do next. Eventually, I dragged myself to the kitchen to make tea, only to realize there was no food in the house. I ordered soup from Uber Eats. When it arrived, I sat on the cold kitchen floor, spooning the broth into my mouth while tears streamed down my face. I cried because I was hungry. I cried because my body hurt. I cried because I had no baby. And I cried because the man I married, the man I had loved, had abandoned me in every possible way. I checked my phone, hoping to see a message from Marcus. There was one, a picture of him and his friends at a bar. The caption? Saturday vibes. Self-care is important. Self-care. I laughed bitterly as I wiped my tears. How ironic that Marcus got to take care of himself, while I couldn't even take care of myself. That night, as I lay in bed, the anger started bubbling up beneath the grief. I had let Marcus treat me like an afterthought for years. I ignored the red flags when we were dating, when we were engaged, and when we were married. I had built a life around making him happy. But where had that left me? Alone. Marcus's relationship with social media had always been a problem, but after the miscarriage, it became unbearable. He posted pictures of himself smiling at work events, going out for drinks, and even commenting under pictures of women twerking. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I saw women posting fire emojis under his photos. I saw him liking thirst traps, and it made me feel like I was nothing. My own husband couldn't give me the bare minimum of love and support, but he could hand out compliments to strangers online like candy. When I asked him about it, his response was always the same. "You're making a big deal out of nothing, Nat." One night, I confronted him. "Why do you spend so much time on your phone? You ignore me, but you have time to flirt with women online?" He rolled his eyes. "They're just posts. Stop acting crazy." Crazy. That word cut through me like a knife. Was I crazy? Or was I just finally seeing things for what they were? For months after the miscarriage, I tried to hold on. I wanted to believe Marcus could change. I wanted to believe we could fix what was broken. I asked him to come to therapy with me. He refused. "I don't need therapy, Nat. You're the one with the problem." I begged him to spend more time with me. He told me he was too busy. I spent my days crying, unable to eat, unable to sleep. I stopped looking at myself in the mirror because I hated what I saw: pale skin, hollow eyes, a body that had failed me. At my lowest point, I thought, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm just not enough. The breaking point came one evening when I logged onto Instagram and saw Marcus's latest post, a picture of him smiling at a bar. The caption read, "Another day, another win." I stared at the screen, shaking with rage. He didn't even acknowledge the baby we lost. He didn't acknowledge me, his grieving wife, who was barely holding herself together. That was it. The next morning, I packed a small bag, called a friend to pick me up, and left. Marcus didn't even notice I was gone until that night. He called me, furious. "Where the hell are you?" he barked. "I'm gone, Marcus," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. "I deserve better than this." Divorce dispatcher questions. Why did I let it get this bad before walking away? What does it mean to rebuild yourself after losing everything?
Divorce dispatcher is here. You rang. Natalie's breaking point is something many people can relate to, realizing you've accepted far too little for far too long. Her story highlights the emotional and psychological damage of neglect. If Natalie moves forward with divorce, she must ensure financial protections are in place, especially given her health issues and Marcus's history of emotional absence. Documentation of neglect, texts, social media activity, and therapy records can play a role in court to demonstrate patterns of behavior.
Update 1. Therapy and healing. Leaving Marcus was just the beginning. I spent the next year in therapy, unpacking years of neglect, self-doubt, and unresolved grief. My therapist told me, "You spent so long trying to be invisible, Natalie. Now it's time to let yourself be seen." I started small. I cooked meals for myself. I went on walks. I journaled every night, writing down all the ways I had let myself disappear and all the ways I was starting to come back. Marcus reached out occasionally. He texted apologies saying he didn't know how to handle things. But I didn't respond. His excuses no longer mattered to me. Update 2. Reflection and moving on. A year later, I'm still healing. I still get triggered when I see happy pregnancy announcements or couples posting about their perfect relationships online, but I've learned not to compare my life to anyone else's. Social media, I realized, had been a silent poison in my marriage. Marcus used it to escape, to avoid reality, and to make me feel invisible. But now, I've deleted him from my world. Final reflection, my advice to others. If you're reading this and you feel like I did, lost, invisible, and trapped, know this. You are worthy. You deserve a love that sees you, that holds you, that chooses you every single day. Don't wait as long as I did to set boundaries. Don't let anyone convince you that your feelings don't matter.
Final divorce dispatcher commentary. Natalie's journey is one of pain, healing, and self-discovery. Her story reminds us that neglect can be as damaging as abuse, and leaving isn't failure, it's freedom. If you're struggling in a similar situation, know that help is available. Seek therapy, surround yourself with support, and prioritize your emotional and financial well-being. Divorce may feel like the end, but sometimes it's the beginning of a better life. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please comment, like, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next video. Your support means a lot, and we love hearing from you in the comments. Divorce Dispatch is signing off duty. Until next time, take care.